guys, we're in Greenwood, Mississippi today. I thought we might start this story off at the Emmett Till statue. You know, this statue is the only standalone statue in tribute to Emmett in the whole world. And it's right here on Johnson Street in Greenwood. And hey, this is the part where I say if you like this kind of content, why don't you boop that like button? We're in Sumner, Mississippi now to take a brief look at the Emmett Till Interpretive Center and then walk across the street and look through the courthouse where the murder trial for Emmett's murderers took place and talk about that story. You know, I really have to give a shout out to the staff here at the Emmett Till Interpretive Center. This one particular lady, I forget her name, but was terribly welcoming and open to any question I had. They're sort of retooling the interpretive center, but it's set up to be a fantastic place for learning, and I imagine a great place to bring school kids on a field trip. And folks, I'm going to skip through the information that it's covered on these panels you see before you because, well, we've covered that pretty extensively in previous videos, especially the one entitled Emmett Till Eyewitness Account. It'll be great to come back here and see how this place has grown. You know, the trip to the courthouse here in Sumner is a hard one for me. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around how the events that unfolded here did in fact happen. As I looked around the old courthouse, I found a copy of the New York Times from the day after the trial. I think I'm just going to read parts of that article as we walk around this old building. I'll point out a few key spots along the way. I like to put myself in the place of people that must have been walking up these stairs during the trial in September of 1955 and wonder about what kind of things that they were feeling and what they were thinking about. Of course, those things would have been very different if you were, say, Mamie Till Bradley or J.W. Milam. For those that somehow don't know, Miss Mamie was Bobo's mother, and Milam was Bobo's murderer. He was one of them, of course. Rory Bryant was the other, and we'll see him in just a sec. But let's get back to that New York Times article. As we look around this old courtroom and take in the events that unfolded here in September of 1955, the article is entitled, Mississippi Jury Acquits Two Accused in Youth Killing. The author is a John Popham. Two Mississippi white men accused of the murder of Emmett Louis Till, 14-year-old Chicago Negro, were acquitted today. A jury of 12 white neighbors of the defendants reached the verdict after 1 hour and 5 minutes of deliberations. Roy Bryant, a 24-year-old country storekeeper, and his half-brother J.W. Milam, 36, both born and reared in Tallahatchie County, where the trial was held, greeted the verdict by embracing their wives, lighting up cigars, and posing for photographs, while relatives and friends extended congratulations. The trial concerned only the murder count of the kidnap murder indictment that was voted on September 6 by the Tallahatchie grand jury after Emmett's dead body was found within the county's jurisdiction. You guys remember Emmett was abducted in LaFleur County around 4 days after he interacted with Carolyn Bryant at Bryant's Grocery. Immediately after this verdict, Tallahassee's kidnapping charge was dismissed because that trial properly belonged in LaFleur County. A guy named Robert Smith was the special prosecutor for this murder trial, and he said that Bryant and Milam would be turned over to LaFleur County law enforcement that same day to face kidnapping charges. Guys, if I remember right, the kidnapping trial never even happened. The jury received the case for deliberation at 2:35 p.m. local time. At 3:40, they filed out of the jury room, and at 3:43, the foreman, J.A. Shaw, Jr., from the community of Webb, announced the decision was not guilty. You're looking at the juror's box, and the door behind it, I believe, to have been the witness room. And you'll notice in this next clip, Miss Carolyn Bryant entering the courtroom from one of these doors. The article continues to state that the courtroom seats about 250 people, and there were about 40 African Americans sitting in a segregated section. 25 or so people stood along the walls. Now I want to call your attention to the witness stand before we continue on with the article. That's Preacher Moses Wright, Emmett's great uncle, pointing out the men that abducted Emmett. Now this was a significant moment and a moment of great courage for Moses, because that's the first time that a black man stood up against a white man in court in the state of Mississippi. The Times article goes on to say how there was no real commotion in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Members of the press converged on the defendants and requested that they pose for pictures. Mr. Milam said, "I'm happy with the outcome," and his wife Juanita added, "I was scared, but sure of the verdict." Bryant replied, "I'm glad to get loose," and his wife Carolyn said, "I'm real happy at the result." Mr. Shaw, who was chosen as the juror's spokesman, said the jury had taken 3 ballots. The first vote was 9 for acquittal and 3 not voting. The second was 10 for acquittal and 2 not voting. And the third was unanimous for acquittal. Guys, it seems that there was some kind of belief that the body had not been identified beyond a reasonable doubt as being that of Emmett Till. Of the testimony of Miss Mamie Bradley, Emmett's mother, who of course identified the body as that of her son, and also the silver ring as that of one belonging to her son, Mr. Shaw said, and folks, this is a direct quote in the paper, he said, "If she had tried a little harder, she might have got out a tear." During her testimony, Mamie had removed her glasses and wiped her eyes with a tissue. The article says the jury had been instructed that it could return any of 4 verdicts: guilty as charged, which would require a mandatory sentence of death; guilty with recommendation for life imprisonment; guilty with the recommendation that the jury can't agree on fixing the penalty, which would require the judge to fix life imprisonment; and, of course, acquittal. Mississippi statutes at the time did not provide for degrees of murder, with varying punishments. Because of the race-related factors involved in this case, it's widely predicted that a verdict carrying either death or life imprisonment was most unlikely. This was regarded by many as the major factor underlying the jury's action. The defense attorney, Mr. Whitten, said in his closing arguments that rebel-rousers had brought notoriety and national newspaper coverage to Sumner. He also said that "I'm sure that every last Anglo-Saxon one of you has the courage to free these men in the face of that pressure." The special prosecutor, Mr. Smith, said, "We can only keep our way of life when we support the constitutional guarantee of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for every citizen, and Emmett Till was entitled to his life." Mr. Smith said there was no way to discount the finding of Emmett's ring on the dead body as powerful proof in support of identification, and that his mother should be viewed as the key identification witness, because the last thing in God's creation a mother wants is to believe that her son is dead. Well, guys, there's much more that we could say about the events that unfolded here in September of 1955. But I'm going to leave it at that for a while. I really want to encourage you to come here and see this place for yourself sometime. Thank you.